Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It is once again me, Zach, here today with our first podcast episode. Joining me is Chandler.
Hey guys, how we doing today? We're very excited to be bringing this to you.
This is very new to us. We've never done anything like this before that I can remember. So let us know how we do. We're going to be starting off today with a specific series that we are watching together. I mean, as together as we can watch from, different sides of the country. But it is the Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K series created by a fan with too much time. I'll put a link on the screen, probably in the description as well, all that good stuff, so you guys can check it out too. Today we're going to be talking about specifically just the first episode, Emperors and Dark Gods. So, Chandler, would you like to start, or you want me to start us off here?
I can go ahead and get us started off here. So first off, this is an exciting opportunity because I don't know a whole lot about Warhammer 40K, um, and I've always wanted to learn more. So now that we've decided to do this, it's going to be a great opportunity for me to dig into something that I've always had an interest in. Um, the first thing that I noticed when I listened to this video, listened to it quite a few times because trying to get everything here in my head, was choosing the Clone Wars era. Um, I don't know if he ever establishes why he chose the Clone Wars era, but like it's such a pivotal, easily like the galaxy is about to fracture in the Star Wars universe, and picking this time for the invasion from the Warhammer 40K faction is just, I think it's brilliant, honestly, because it
Yes.
completely changes the whole core dynamic of the Republic versus Separatist fight here. So I'm interested to see how that kind of gets handled.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things I was going to point out even is that it's interesting because you have Palpatine on the cusp of victory, right? His own personal victory,
Mhm.
because this is right before, I think it's set right before the Siege of Coruscant would have been.
I
Pretty sure.
believe so, is what I gathered. Yeah.
It's around that time period, so like this is right as the CIS are about to collapse, right?
Mhm.
And he's about to make his move on the Jedi. And then this wrench is thrown into his plans. So we get to see Palpatine kind of at his best. I mean, it's at his worst because he's a jerk, but we get to see him like full political cunning. He's immediately like, how can I use this?
Mhm.
Like, I don't want this to
And
slow my
that's
plans down.
Yeah, no, and that's also interesting because right now we're working at the end of the video and going backwards. But one of the things I thought, really getting into some details here, he's got his aide, whoever he is, who comes like, "Hey, we found something. We found a disturbance on the hyperspace buoys here," and he's already like, "Well, I knew that already. Duh, you're like 10 years late with this right here."
Yeah.
Um, which you know, I guess forego all structure here for a second. This brings up an interesting, like, if we're looking, if we want to put lists, like, okay, how is this going to affect this right here? An interesting thing. How is the use of the Force going to interact with the 40K lore, 40K, just the entire 40K faction right there. So I'm very interested to see how that all plays out.
Yes. I guess I should say before we get any further is that I have watched some of this series myself, like the first season or whatever it is, at least the first handful of episodes in the
Mm.
past. So I do know where some of this goes, and I will be trying not to, spoil any of it for you.
Don't spoil it for
No
me.
spoilers, please. Um, but yes, that is obviously a very important part of how the entire interaction goes from this point on. And even in this
Mm.
episode, we see that a little bit with Palpatine feeling like they're there, before
Hmm.
anybody else is aware of it. Even the Jedi don't know, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, this aide brings this information to him, and he's relieved because he's like, "Thank you, I finally have an excuse for how I knew this thing that I, a kindly old man, would not know about."
Yeah.
I also like to point out, since we're kind of starting with the Star Wars guys here, which I think is a good starting point. Um, Palpatine, things that I liked about his characterization. He is so casually racist
Oh my
instantly in this.
gosh. The Trandoshan Jedi?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
like
That fits Palpatine perfectly, because he is very, very much, you look throughout, we'll look at, canon Star Wars, and I will reference EU Star Wars as well, probably at some point here, because I think at this point EU kind of still had some hold on Star Wars canon. I don't
well,
know.
I
We
will
may
say
retcon
that
that in the future.
a fan with too much time does place EU canon as pretty important. He does use stuff from Disney as well here and there, but
Okay.
he's an older fan, so a lot of his storytelling comes from the EU as well.
Okay, cool. I like that then. Perfect. So yes, in using the EU storytelling, Palpatine is wildly xenophobic.
Yes.
Wildly xenophobic. Sorry, Wookiees. There's a great example right there. Um,
Yeah.
hey, Kashyyyk. Hey, this looks like a great place for everybody to work and die. So yeah. Um, but no. I have to look, and I didn't even think to look this up. What is his name? What's the Trandoshan Jedi's name? Wow, I feel like a fool right now. Anyway, I will know that for the future. But a Trandoshan Jedi, first off, that immediately caught me because I'm like, I don't ever remember seeing a Trandoshan Jedi anywhere. So I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
I like the Trandoshans. Uh, Design wise, anyway, I think they're really
Mm,
cool. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of fans want to see more of is
hmm.
aliens being main characters, being Jedi, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Not
Hmm.
relegated constantly to the background.
Yeah,
But
and just side characters. Yep.
yeah, Palpatine definitely ordered the entire empire around a human supremacist viewpoint, which in the original movies was an allegory for a whole bunch of real world stuff, but
Uh-huh.
in the context of the actual story, it's so important to see the rebellion having so many aliens, especially by
Mm,
Return of the Jedi. There's multiple aliens playing huge pivotal roles in the rebellion, in the destruction of the second Death Star and things like that.
mhm,
And then you see the stormtroopers and they're all just like dudes, just guys,
yep.
humans.
Mhm,
Um, so it's interesting because as bad as Palpatine is, transitioning a tiny bit here for a moment, as bad as
mhm,
Palpatine is, he's nothing compared to the Warhammer 40k guys, right? In the few moments we see of the Warhammer 40k side, they are already spitting some mad xenophobia
yeah.
instantly. There's not even an alien near them, and they're just like, God, I fucking hate Xenos, dude.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. That's in my limited knowledge of Warhammer 40K, one of the most one of the phrases that comes away all the time that I hear all the time is purge the Xenos.
Yeah.
So interested to see how this because they're just in another galaxy. Are these humans considered Xenos? For example.
Yeah.
Will Palpatine consider, does he consider a space marine a human? Or, because of the extensive genetic modification, does he see them as not human?
hmm hmm Yeah, and I mean not spoiling anything here with this part, but one of the things that happens a lot in Warhammer 40k, because in the more expanded lore that happens kind of behind the scenes, there
Mm,
are, untold billions of humans living in the galaxy of Warhammer that nobody knows about, right? Because they've
yeah.
been scattered and separate from the main Imperium for so long, and many of those have formed working and friendly relationships with Xenos species. And when the Empire finds them working hand in hand, they generally eradicate them, right?
Gotcha.
So even if the Warhammer 40K people come upon the humans in Star Wars and are like, "Oh, you guys are human," they're also like, "Ah, but you're Xenos fuckers, so
Ah, yes.
out you get. No xenophiles allowed." But that is one of the things, right? So, uh, talking about the overall setting for a moment here, because like you messaged me when you first listened to it, you're like, "I'm not sure how Star Wars stands a chance here."
Mm-hmm.
Basically, and that's a fair point. But one of the things that's so great about a fan with too much time is while he always is giving Warhammer its flowers, right? He's like, yeah, they got the big guns and they are good at doing war. He
Mm-hmm.
never forgets that Star Wars does have several very important advantages, strategic and
Mm-hmm.
tactical, over the Warhammer universe. And I wanted to talk about those for like just a moment here before we
Yes.
get back
Yes.
into the characters.
Mm-hmm.
One is actually the hyperlane system. It's first off way safer than the warp generally, but also
Mm-hmm.
more reliable and
As we
usually
can see,
faster.
because of this,
Yeah,
this
the
whole thing.
whole event in itself is the warp being a fucker,
Mm,
basically.
yeah.
Whereas, like, the hyperlane system, you want to go point A to point B, you go point A to point B. It takes you a couple minutes and you're halfway across the galaxy, you know? Like, it
Yeah.
takes a few days, I think, to cross the bulk of the galaxy, most of the
Mm-hmm.
time. But that is very fast compared to how in the warp sometimes it could take you years to cross the galaxy, right? Now, not always. The warp is sometimes faster. That comes up later. But, like,
Mm-hmm.
the reliability in terms of like military maneuvering and stuff, reliability often trumps, raw potential, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is not just that the hyperlanes allow that greater flexibility. It's also that the Star Wars universe is, not just like multicultural, but it's a melting pot of different peoples with different strengths and weaknesses. And as
Yeah.
long as they can call upon that and they're not being, human supremacy to death, you
Mm-hmm.
have alien species that can do things that others just can't.
Yeah.
Like there are peoples in the Star Wars universe who are just psychic.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to do with the Force. They can just read minds, right?
Yeah.
Um, and if you can pool together these resources from all these different places and you can field a military that has a little bit of everything,
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty impressive. Like it's not a pushover by any stretch of the imagination because the Warhammer guys are never going to change. They're going
Yeah.
to keep like they might change their tactics and stuff, but they won't really advance technologically. They're not really going to adapt too much. They are raw power. They're a hammer swinging at your head. And if you can
Yeah.
figure out a way to avoid the hammer or get a gun, you can beat them, right?
Yeah.
And Star Wars does have, and this is something they reference later in the series, it does have a long history of kind of demilitarizing itself, right? A fan
Gotcha.
with too much time goes into this a little bit. In The Mandalorian, he's got that cool disintegrating gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Yeah.
is it most people don't use that? Because they're not allowed,
Yeah.
right? That's technology that has just been kind of forbidden in Star Wars. But if you
Mm.
come to Star Wars and you step hard enough, Star Wars might be like, I don't know, this whole space Geneva Convention thing is seeming a little bit silly now. Maybe we bring back the disintegrating guns.
Right. Yeah.
So we won't get into a whole lot of that right now because that'll come up later in the series, but I just think it's important to note that Star Wars, while it is the underdog here,
Mm-hmm.
it has a chance, a pretty solid chance, I would even say. Plus, gotta note this. This is Clone Wars. You've got Mace Windu, Yoda, and Anakin Skywalker kicking it in the same galaxy as Palpatine.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of big balls swinging around.
Yeah. No, for sure. Um, and two, I kind of want to dip into some of the Warhammer 40K stuff right here as well. Um, so things I don't know. So obviously, one of the biggest things here, question I had for you,
Mhm.
what do the Space Marines lose by not having the influence of the Emperor? I know that's actually very important. but what do they lose by not being able to be connected with him? Because I know the original is it Astrogator
Yeah.
lost her mind. Like when they came out of the war, she lost her mind and broke because she can't feel the influence of the God Emperor.
Well, some of this will become important later, but it's not really a spoiler to note it here.
Okay.
It's a double-edged sword. Okay, so first off, the Astrogator specifically loses her mind because the Emperor sitting on the Golden Throne is basically a lighthouse for
Hmm.
navigation in Warhammer 40k. The only
Okay.
reason warp travel is usable at all for humans is because he is a beacon that helps guide them through the warp.
Gotcha.
Losing that connection for the Astrogator specifically is devastating, mind breaking essentially. It's
Hmm.
like if the sun went out, right? Like that would probably fuck us up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we'd
Yeah.
also die, but like it's that level of oh fuck happening to this person, right?
Gotcha.
And that's not great. Individual space marines are not supremely affected because they don't really rely on the emperor to do most of what they do. Not directly. He created like the gene seed and the technology and stuff that lets them do what they do, but they don't
Hmm.
need his psychic presence necessarily. It
Gotcha.
becomes very relevant that they are in Star Wars specifically for psychers, which
Gotcha.
we'll see soon, because normally the warp is a hellscape, right? It's full of demons and stuff. But
Yeah.
in a different galaxy, you actually have a different warp, right? And it's calm here.
Gotcha.
So that actually kind of takes the shackles off of them. You don't have to worry, oh, I'm going to open that door with psychic powers. Oops, a demon ate my face. You don't have to worry about that in Star Wars, right? Which means they can kind of cut loose a
Gotcha.
bit more. But it does
That makes sense.
mean that there is a potential that, say, there are like, I think they're just called saints in the setting, which are like people who, for whatever reason, the Emperor blesses them and they just go sicko mode and kill like 40 dudes at once or something. I don't know
Gotcha.
if you get that when you're in a different galaxy from the Emperor, you know? You may not get those
Ah.
like divine blessings and stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean there's a lot to it and we'll get into more of it throughout the series, but that's kind of the summary version.
Perfect. 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 Um, the other thing that I had that was interesting and going through, like I realize we will find out, you know, what the entirety of the Warhammer side on this has access to in terms of soldiers, fleets, everything. But it feels like they are also fighting. They have finite resources until obviously, I I don't imagine that they're going to not conquer any worlds because that seems very up their alley. Like, oh look, world conquer, this is ours now.
Yeah.
But just I'm interested to see how they gain resources, how they kind of adapt to being by themselves.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah, well they part of the initial arc it covers all of that actually.
cool.
So I won't spoil
Perfect.
anything here, but that's another great thing about a fan with too much time is the amount of like homework he puts into not just the settings and the series on both sides, Star Wars and Warhammer, but also having like an understanding of things like basic strategy and
Hmm.
tactics, you know?
Yeah.
Makes it a little bit more believable because they are separated from the Imperium. They don't have unlimited resources. It says in this episode that they are explicitly trying to escort refugees, right?
Hmm.
Fleeing
Yeah.
from dead worlds. Like that's a lot of until you have a place to put them, that's a lot of dead weight in terms of like
Yeah.
military stuff, right? Mouths to feed, people who don't know how to carry weapons that you have to protect. You know, it's incredibly vulnerable having like a random passenger ship hanging out in the middle of your naval warfield.
Yeah. No,
So
very true.
yeah, but did you have any other questions about Warhammer for this episode?
Um, I don't think so right now. Um, I think I'm just very excited to see where this goes. because there's just so much to be learned here, and a fan with too much time. He's a great storyteller already. That was 18 minutes of some of the best storytelling I've heard. Um, so yeah, super excited. This also scratches an itch for me because my favorite EU storyline in Star Wars is the Yuuzhan Vong invasion. So this gives me those, those vibes right there. That's the only word, vibes.
Yeah.
So I very, very much love it. Because that started off with, they didn't destroy all the hyperspace sensors like the Yuuzhan Vong did when they invaded, but it's the same thing. Like, oh, we have problems. We're sensing something on our the hyperspace sensors on the outer edges of the galaxy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Is bad.
very bad. Yeah. No, I'm the and I already know he's a good enough storyteller. My only concern was going into this that um there's no like Star Wars has to pull out like some Deus Ex Machina, to get through all of this, or Warhammer 40K has to do the same thing. But I feel like a fan with too much time is a great storyteller, so we're not going to have to worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I got into it, he definitely did a really good job of making it believable when Star Wars takes W's, um, and L's, frankly.
Gotcha.
Like, they never feel like they are being brushed aside,
Mm,
really. They always feel like they have a plan to kind of get back on their feet. Again,
gotcha.
going back to like the strength of the Star Wars universe in this fight, a lot of it is that being able to pool strategies, tactics, ideas, and technology from so many different people at all times. And one of the other interesting things about the time period that it's set in is that while this is not like a technological high point necessarily, it's fine, but it's not like the most militant the galaxy's ever been. It is a period of war. So you have
Um,
the Republic clone army being very, like, they're a very veteran force at this point. They're very
yeah,
experienced. And you have a galaxy that's already leaning into what the Empire would be, which is a hyper militarized nation, right? Where it was like
yeah,
a lot of its industry was existed to pump out war machines. You're
yeah.
not quite there. The Republic is still the Republic at this point, but it is leaning that way. So you don't have to, in Sins of a Solar Empire, going to a completely different series here for a second.
Heck yeah,
When the TEC got attacked, they were like a merchant empire, and they had to scramble to retrofit their merchant ships to put up any kind of fight. Star
yeah.
Wars is not in that stage because if it was, if you set this like, I don't know, a little time before this, before the Clone Wars started, they might have
Hmm.
gotten rolled, right? Because I mean, the
Yeah,
Trade Federation had to build their own ships to guard their own shipping lanes because the Republic could not keep piracy down. That's just
yeah,
pirates, like let alone a Warhammer fleet invading,
yeah,
just appearing over Coruscant. But now, yeah, I mean, like clones aren't going to stand up to a Space Marine 1v1, but you got a lot of clones, and you can make
yeah.
more if you need, right? Which is fucked
Oh
up
yeah,
to say because they're people, but
yeah.
we're
But
speaking from
that's
Palpatine's perspective here.
yeah. But that's also Camino. I feel like is going to have to play a very pivotal role in this because just clones. We need more clones.
Yeah.
Send dudes, please.
I'm in a fight. I need more men.
Yep.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about it being set in the Clone Wars is you do have this whole other faction that also has a veteran military sitting right
Yes.
over there. And like, what are they
Hmm.
gonna do?
Yep. That and Palpatine is smart enough, I feel, to kind of work in the shadows and get the Republic and the CIS to work together. Together in quotation marks, right there.
Yeah.
With the master of manipulation that he is. Um, Also, a quick nod out going back to Star Wars and the characters. Shout out to a fan with too much time. I like how he took the time to go through the monologue, the internal monologue of Palpatine, where he's like, I've spent so many years clouding clouding the minds of the Jedi, getting rid of their vision, like, their ability to sense in the Force. That I just think that was a really, really cool storytelling bit of storytelling he put in there.
Yeah.
So,
I liked talking about Palpatine again here because I think his characterization was really good.
mhm.
When he first senses the arrival of the fleet, he says that he takes advantage of an emotion that as a Sith he hasn't really had much cause to call upon, but that he likes anyway, and that's fear, right?
Yes.
And that I thought was really cool because it's so Palpatine. Like he gets scared and he's like, "Oh, I kind of like this. I'm kind of into this." Like, what a little freak, you know? I love that guy.
Oh yeah. He's just like, this is just another test of me as the Sith Lord of all Sith Lords.
Yeah,
Let's see how I can use this to my advantage.
yeah. I love just how on the ball he is about stuff. And I will say, because we haven't really talked about the Warhammer side of things in terms of characters yet, because honestly, they're less. Maybe not less notable, but they're less famous for sure. You have some of the most famous Star Wars characters ever in the Clone
Mhm.
Wars. You don't really have that in the Warhammer band because, I mean, the most famous characters in Warhammer are all like demigods and stuff. It would be kind of boring.
Yeah.
But you have the chapter master of the Skywatch,
Mhm.
whose real name I don't remember, but I have that is what he is. He is the chapter master. We
Gotcha.
immediately get really good characterization with him as well, you know?
Mhm.
He feels deeply competent immediately. And he is a control freak. You get that sense
Yeah.
from him instantly. Like he just everything has to be perfect or he gets angry.
Mhm. Yeah.
Love that. That's because he technically the Skywatch are a kind of a subgroup of the Ultramarines, right?
Okay.
And the Ultramarines are kind of that way anyway. They're very particular about stuff. So I think that that was a really cool kind of character quirk to give him.
Gotcha.
Um, the disunity that's hinted at already on the Warhammer side, I think, is also very well done, kind of well
Mhm.
shown off. In he's talking to one of his own aides, and this dude, like he even says, this dude is way better than anyone else who does this job. I'm still annoyed at him for bringing me bad news, though. And
Yeah.
there's already that friction between these different factions going on.
Yeah.
Which is great because that's exactly the kind of thing that Palpatine can take advantage of in his own ways, right?
Yeah.
And we'll see some more of that faction disunity later on, um, pretty soon, I think, actually, here in the next couple episodes. So that's good.
I
But
like it.
um, yeah, the chapter master is just instantly you get the sense he's intelligent, he's experienced, you know, but you also get that sense of him being like a super xenophobe,
Yes.
which again you listen to Palpatine and you're like, oh, this dude's a bad guy. He hates aliens for no reason. Then you listen to the Space Marines, you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, you know. Palpatine kind of gets a vibe like, am I the less evil person here? All of a sudden?
Yeah.
Hold up, that's not how that's supposed to be.
Nah, he's gonna have to. He's like, okay, you know what? Let me one up these guys. I can be more evil than them.
Yeah, and of course the funniest thing about that is that in the Warhammer universe, the humans, the Imperium, are not really the good guys, but they're one of the better guys, right? But
Mhm.
then they go to Star Wars and they are deeply evil, like
Yeah.
possibly the most evil thing that has ever come to the Star Wars universe, except like the Sith Empire. And even then, the Sith Empire had some like okay sides to it.
Yeah.
The Imperium does not. Like it's just bad.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the things that makes this fun as well is you just kind of I'm a bigger Warhammer fan than a Star Wars fan these days,
Yeah.
but I still root for Star Wars a lot throughout this series because A, they're the underdogs initially, and B, they're obviously the good side here, you know?
Yeah.
Like even the Sith are like maybe we should get rid of these Space Marine guys. They seem a little bit uptight.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I mean there's not a whole lot in this episode left to talk about, I don't think, unless you had anything else.
No, I don't think. I'm just excited to. I'm just excited to get into this and see how this story progresses.
Oh yeah, we'll be able to talk a lot more about some of that stuff you were asking about, and some of the more interesting points will come up very soon. We'll start getting into some more direct confrontations between the two. But I think overall
Mm,
this episode is good at setting up both sides and the kind of oncoming conflict for sure.
I agree for sure. Yep.
Did you have any closing thoughts for us?
No, I'm just excited to be really digging into this series. Very excited to be highlighting such a great storyteller. That's the other thing. I'm already very impressed with Fan with Too Much Time with the storytelling. So I just can't wait to hear more of the storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have any other closing thoughts except, thanks everybody for listening to the
Hmm.
podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We will be probably doing like one of these a week or so going forward.
Hmm.
Maybe like every other week when they start getting
Yep.
longer. Because the episodes do get pretty long as we go forward, and we both want to take time to listen to them at least twice, really,
Yeah.
to take notes and stuff. So we'll see. We'll figure the
Indeed.
schedule out in the future. But like I said, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for listening.
Hmm.
I almost said thanks for watching. There's nothing to look at right now, but thanks for listening. And this has been Zach and Chandler signing off. Peace.